This show is sponsored by Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den 10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is a seasoned sales and business veteran with a master's in finance and economics from Northwestern University. His 40-year career began on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, where he started his first business in partnership with his brother Curtis. With the introduction of electronic trading, he transitioned to Wall Street to participate in this disruptive new technology. As a senior sales executive with some of the world's most prominent financial institutions, he learned the business practices that can propel or crush a company's potential for success. He was able to apply those lessons as a founder and board member of a small business which developed into a publicly listed company on the NASDAQ. During his vast experience at the heart of the financial world, he weathered and witnessed the personal and societal impacts caused by the increasing speed, complexity, and volatility of the industry. He observed and recognized how the extraordinary wealthy rarely shared the credit or the wealth with the employees, vendors, and community that made organizational success a reality. The power of a reshaped version of capitalism and potential of the community and socially conscious leaders inspired his mission to help redefine the hierarchical shareholder first corporate model and foster companies that prioritize purpose as importantly as profits. Driven by an unshakable desire to partner with the leaders of small and medium businesses, he found Get Looped LLC as a platform to showcase the value and benefits of a collective prosperity for people, businesses, and communities. Today, he helps businesses and CEOs incorporate prosperity and collaboration with profitability into their business practices. Please welcome author and founder, Chris Lautenslager. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the introduction.
Oh, thank you very much. I very rarely read someone's entire bio. A lot of times I'll chop it up and I'll add my own little spin to it and put a little flavor to it of my own personal decision or whatever. But after I had read it over again and was looking at it and looking at where I could put my own spin and everything, I really just liked how well written it was, and I also liked how it kind of went through a story of your life. And so I decided to go with it. And even though it was so long, I was like, I'm reading this whole thing because it's just such a good bio, and it just, there's so much in it to unravel. And I feel that right from the start, our audience who's listening right now can get a feel for some of the things we're going to talk about, some of the challenges that you had to deal with, some of the highs, some of the lows, and just so much to it. And then on the other side of all of that, you're a professional speaker. And so I wanted to impress you. I'm just a little joke there. But yeah, so let's jump into this life that you started in finance and right there on the floor in Chicago.
So when I graduated from college, was during a very difficult time in the economy, was 1981. I'll give all of you in the audience a moment to do the math and recognize that I have a few years in my background. They call that being seasoned in the author business. But 1981 was a very difficult time. Interest rates were double digits, unemployment was high, businesses were failing across the field, and I needed a job. I was I got my degree in accounting, and I was training to be a member of my family business. In fact, can I step back a little bit, Michael, and tell you my focus was to run the family business. My father had a small paving company, a local paving company here in the suburbs of Chicago, and our entire family supported and participated in helping that business run. It was what we did. And I went to college to get a degree to become a member and eventual leader of that business. And during the late 70s, as the construction industry started to fall apart and essentially collapse, his business collapsed with it and left us struggling. It was, I have the story of when my father passed and I came home from university. After the funeral, the accountant came over to the house and went through the piles of bills that were on my dad's desk. And the whole family waited anxiously for him to come up and tell us what was what. So when he was done, we all gathered around the kitchen table, the entire family. And he sat down and he just looked at his hands. And that's when he said, "There's no money. I'm sorry, but there's no money." And panic went through my mind. How could that be? What are we going to do? What's going to happen to us? And that's when I realized that my mom next to me was softly sobbing. She was so afraid. And instinctively, I just leaned over and held her tight and said, "It'll be okay, Mom. I promise. I'll take care of it. It'll be okay." And I think all of us have that instinct of wanting to take care of our loved ones, whether they're our parents, our spouse, partner, children. We want to do what's right to be able to take care of those and eventually fulfill the dreams that we have about what life can be. But back in those days, I just wanted to get a check. I had student loans. I was living with my mom. I moved back to Chicago. I was living with my mom. I wanted to find a job and I couldn't. And so I took any job I could. I took temp jobs. I was working for a company called Account Temps, and they would give me temporary jobs, being just a bookkeeper. And one of the companies that I went to work for was a company called Heinold Commodities. They were a regional commodity firm, and I was an accountant in their fund accounting department. And they offered me a job. And I took it. And that's how I got into the financial industry. That's how I got into the commodity industry, was through just doing a good job and wanting to fit in, wanting to be a part of. I talk to a lot of young people, and there's so much emphasis on finding the right path, the right career. What am I going to do? And I often see they're almost paralyzed, afraid of making the wrong choice. Mm. There is no wrong choice. Dig in, follow the path that's given to you, and have faith. Do the right thing. Do a good job, and opportunity will guide your path. You will be given opportunities that it'll become apparent to you what you should and shouldn't do. And I say, don't worry about it. You have plenty of time to make mistakes. You'll make them and you'll recover. So
which is very true. Ahead. Which is very true. Yeah. I always talk about taking action. Is that, once you take action on a decision, so many different opportunities are going to open, and it just opens the door to so many different paths, and some could feel better than others.
Very much so. And as you were saying, get into action, do something. And the other aspect, though, is do it well. Going into a position in which you're going to be moping or grumpy, or I recently had a little bit of PT done, and I like the people that I go and have this work done with. They're giving, loving, caring people. However, this particular therapist was grumpy, and towards the end, I guided the conversation towards, what do you want to do? Why are you here? Why are you so mad?
Yeah.
And really what it came out to be is she's a dancer. She loves to dance. She wants to dance. And this is just paying the bills. And we talked about the fact that what's the likelihood of, if just by chance a dance instructor or producer of a Broadway show came in and was working with her and she was grumpy, that he would want to work with her as a dancer. And she got it. She realized that opportunity comes from the relationships that you have with other people. And you don't know where, when, or how. But I promise you that the possibilities and the likely successes come from having a positive attitude and doing a good job with the job that you're currently doing. You'll be given opportunities to do others.
That's a really great lesson. I'm happy that you did go back into time and bring us back to that tragic moment in your life that really shaped what you decided to do going forward. If we could actually go a little bit further back in growing up in this household of entrepreneurship and having this energy around you that everybody was putting into building the business, I'm very interested in what that life was like prior to obviously it ending and then you taking the reins of everything. And the reason for that question is, I think it resonates with so many other entrepreneurs out there that are starting, that are finding their way. And I think it's always nice to hear the story from somebody who's experienced it like yourself.
Happy to. So my dad had a successful small business. His name was Kurt. And he was a high school dropout. He would race stock cars. He fought in the Korean War. He tried it as a Chicago fireman, so he'd run into burning buildings to save lives. And he was kind of kicking it around, trying to figure out what to do with his life. One day, he and his brother Ben are out patching holes in Ben's driveway. And the neighbor stops and says, "Hey, would you patch the holes in my driveway too? I'll pay you." B&C, Ben and Kurt Paving Company, was born. And growing up, anytime I wasn't going to school, my dad would wake me at 4 a.m. He'd drag me to Doris's Diner, where all the local businessmen started their day. They'd be sitting around the table, drinking coffee, talking about their families, talking about the town, what was going on. And always talking about the Cubs and how bad they were playing back then. It's kind of just a given. But the Cubs were on every day. We had the game on every single day. So it was just part of life back then. Anyways, when breakfast was over, it was off to work. And I learned how to do every job at that company. I was part of the crew. And I learned how to do everything from managing the traffic on busy city streets to shoveling hot asphalt on truly sweltering summer days to driving the big steamroller, which I got to do all the time. And yes, that's actually fun.
I could imagine.
People come by and are like, can I drive the steamroller? I'm like, no, no, you can't. Is it fun? Yes, it is. It's like driving the Zamboni. I've always wanted to drive the Zamboni, or at least take a ride on it.
Yeah.
But driving the steamroller is fun. Anyways, once that was done, I went off to school, and life changed coming back from school. You know, my father was a tough man. And when I came back from school, he started treating me differently. I noticed that he treated me differently. He started asking me what I thought instead of telling me what to do. I remember one day he was like, Chris, what do you think of this? I was floored. I was gobsmacked. I was so confused that this was coming from my father. But a rite of passage had occurred, I believe. And I also think that he was at a point in his life where he was examining the relationships in his life also. You know, one of the things as we get older, we start to look around us and say, what's really important? And I emphasize time and time again when I give speeches, when I talk to groups, that it's not just about the check. It's not just about making more and acquiring stuff, that it really is about relationships. And that's where the value comes from. And it's not just in regard to the enrichment of your own personal life. It's the relationships that will make your business. And we'll circle back to this. So anyways, the summer I came back from college, great summer with my father. As I was about to walk out the door to head back to school, and I'll never forget this, he pulls me aside and he says, Chris, I love you. I'd never heard that from that man before. I'm 19 years old, and it's the first time he ever told me he loved me.
Must have been impactful.
If I could say anything to your audience, just don't forget. Take the very next moment you have to look at the person that you care for and tell them how much you love them. It's a winner for them. It's a winner for you. I promise. So I head back off to college, and then on a crappy, rainy, cold November day, phone rings. It's my mom. She's crying. Chris, come home. Your father's died. And like that.
Wow.
Life changes.
That was the first time you heard him say, I love you. And then right after that,
he passed.
And you know, there was that long moment of silence right now of you gathering yourself. And I share that only because we have our listeners here who experienced that. And to this day, it sticks with you. Obviously, it's an emotional moment for you to this day. So obviously very impactful. I want to go back to, again, this question that he asked you about what do you think? And, you know, it's interesting. I had another guest on, and we were talking about rites of passage in tribes and sending the young kid out into the woods and fending for themselves. And in fact, he shared a story about one who ended up having to kill a lion, in Africa, where he was standing there for 6 hours, had a standoff with a lion and his stick that he had sharpened, and finally ended up thankfully killing the lion so that he made it back to his tribe, but became the tribe leader because of this. And you're sharing this story now, and obviously very different in going to college. But you went to college or university, excuse me, and came back, and your father saw a change in you. And I'm interested in, did you see that change in yourself when you came back?
I did, in the reflection that he presented to me. You know, we change. Sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, or change can be so minute at times. It doesn't always happen in in revolutionary experiences, transformative experiences. It's bit by bit, bit by bit. And that's one of the pieces of advice that I give to people is, if you want to change, it is bit by bit. It's a little bit of progress every single day. I think consistency is one of the greatest superpowers that any business owner can have. It's showing up every single day and making a little progress every single day, especially on those days when you're tired, you don't want to do it, you're irritated. If you can gather yourself and commit to doing the best that you can, even when you know it's not the best that you can do it all the time, you've won a big, big battle. Because we all experience it. We all experience it. They say life is short, and it is, except every single day.
Yep. And on this topic of change, and on this topic of change, and as I was reading through your bio, and you went through a lot of change in your personal life, and I know that we're going to get into Wall Street and all the different amazing things that you've done in the financial industry. But staying on this personal journey with you, and I know that there's certainly a number of people dealing with their own inner battles and struggles. After I read your bio and I saw that your father had passed, and then now you share some other things about him, I could imagine why you dealt with some of these inner demons. But there was somebody in your life who helped you get it all together and find a new path, and that was your uncle Barry Weed. And I'd love if you could share with our audience some of that inner battle that you had and what your uncle was able to help you experience in that change.
Sure. My family has an affliction of alcoholism. My mom had it. My older brother had it, and he was killed in a drug deal. My younger brother had it, and he committed suicide in a blackout. My sister had it. She recently died of cirrhosis, and I have it. I was blessed in the sense that I was able to hear a message of help. And I was able to humble myself enough to ask for help. So my Uncle Barry, who was a dynamo in the advertising business here in Chicago in the 70s, was very successful, lived in Barrington Hills, a very upscale area of the suburbs. He was working at a white shoe firm, senior accounts, national accounts. So he was in television advertising, and it was all happening for him. And he was a drunk, and he got fired, and he got fired again, and he got fired again, to the point where he didn't have a lot of places to go. And for all of us that have been in that spot or are in that spot, there's help. Ask for help. Pick up the phone. Ask for help. Start the slow and loving journey back to life. Anyways, I needed help. He brought me to my first AA meeting. He gave me my first big book. He saved my life.
How old were you?
And right now,
no. Well, sure.
Oh, how old I then?
You could give us both.
For all those people that were doing the math earlier, I'm 65 right now.
But when you received your first big book, how old were you? 23. 23. And I wish I could say that I stayed sober the entire time, but I had some slips, and learned some. Again, it's really easy to feel alone in this world, particularly when there's a setback, or you've been in an argument, or you don't feel understood.
it's easy to feel alone. And for people that have an affliction of alcoholism or drug addiction, it's a dangerous place to be, because you hear things like, only this time, no one will know, I'll be able to come back tomorrow. Those are all lies. Those are all your disease finding a way to bring you back to its clutches. So Barry, he got sober and he discovered and was a leader in Hispanic television, WBBS here, and I think it was BBS here in Chicago. He learned Spanish, and he was one of the leaders nationally in selling advertising for Hispanic television. So it was at a time when this was considered kind of backwater stuff. It wasn't prestigious. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't cutting edge or exciting. It was kind of, they didn't have the budgets. They didn't have the big stars, but they had an audience. They had millions and millions and millions and millions of people that liked and wanted to see others like themselves. And they weren't getting that on mainstream TV. I think that's one of the real powerful aspects associated with diversity in today's world, is being able to recognize that we're not all the same. And it's okay. In fact, it's just a fact.
Yeah. And you mentioned it too, in that, when you were seeking for your own mentors through books and through philosophers and great leaders in the world, is that it was hard to associate with like the Churchills of the world, and easier for you to associate with more realistic figures. If you'd like to share a little bit more about that and how that also helped you kind of develop into the leader that you've become.
Sure, Michael. So I love history. I think history is fascinating. I think we can learn a lot from it. I think that there are, and I like biographies. I like biographies a lot. So, but when I was younger, the biographies were all about famous white men. That's what all the popular ones, whether it was the trilogy about Teddy Roosevelt, who I admire, or Truman, or Washington, or Jefferson, or Adams, or the founding fathers, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Great. I learned a lot, but I'm not Jefferson. I don't have a huge estate in Virginia. I'm not creating a university. While I could admire them, I couldn't relate to them.
Right. But
I could relate to, and this is going to sound a little bit funny coming from an older white male man, Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
I think Oprah Winfrey is amazing.
Yeah.
This is a woman who had her own battles, still has her own battles, and was willing to share and be vulnerable and help others as she helped herself. And has been really incredibly brilliant in her professional career. She's done well, as they say. So when I started reading about other people and it didn't matter what color they were, what I focus more or can relate more on social economic than race. It's just, there was a phrase, I don't see color. And I understand why people resent that. It's like, how do you not see color? I'm
Right.
black, you're white,
Right.
you're brown, I'm yellow. All true. And each of our races represents an experience, a history, a culture that is different. The woman that I date, who was my girlfriend for many years, who I live with, is African American. We dated in the 80s, and we would walk into restaurants, and people would stare at us, and we would laugh about it. We'd just be like, "We are the two most attractive people in this restaurant. They can't keep their eyes off us."
That's what I was thinking.
So to me, spending time with her and her family, I see and hear and have a closer perspective of what it's like to grow up in a different culture. And it's different than the one I grew up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I resonate with that too, in that for me, and that was kind of the inspiration to the podcast, to this show that I do here. We spoke a little bit about some of the learning and everything, but for me, it was also when I would read others' biographies and being able to relate to those business leaders and entrepreneurs and relate to their experience growing up is what was really inspirational for me. And I go back, one of my favorite ones, and it's no wonder, and Michael Jordan being one of my favorites, and I see he's down as one of yours as well.
He's down as one of mine.
Yep. And being a Nike guy is the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, or written by someone else, but it's about Phil Knight's story. And in there, just going through his the struggles of being an entrepreneur, the struggles of the partnership that he had with his coach, and then going to China and finding the factories and the name and all that came out of that story in that book is relatable. And that really resonated with me, and then so many other stories that of other biographies that I read. In fact, Elon Musk is also one of yours, and I read his. That relatability is so important in our journey in life, but also in our business careers and entrepreneurial journeys. And because on the contrast of that, when I was first trying to learn about business and entrepreneurship and become a leader, I had downloaded Peter Drucker's books. And I'm sure you're familiar with Peter Drucker. One of the.
If only I went to Harvard, I'd have fit right in.
Right, one of the founding fathers of business strategy, and they didn't resonate with me. His story. I actually ended up returning the book because I'm listening to it, and I was like, I can't. This isn't me. So I really love that you touched on that, in that it's not just about being successful. It's not just about sharing all this stuff, but if it's not relatable, then it almost is lost on us, right?
Very much so. I'm glad you brought up Phil Knight and the steps that he took to build his company, because when you read his book, he didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Yes, I love that.
Okay. He made mistakes, and yet he charged forward. I had mentioned I'm starting a speaking business. I've been out public speaking. I like public speaking. When I was in finance and in sales in New York City in the financial industry, I've done literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of presentations. So I feel comfortable, and I feel I have an important message that I want to share and encourage small business owners to feel essential again. I'm going to take a sidetrack here because this is just so important to me. When we were all in the pandemic, and they were talking about that businesses were going to be closed, and that a lot of businesses were deemed non-essential. And as it turned out, almost all of them were small businesses, family-owned businesses. When I heard that, I was outraged. I was just so angry that anyone could consider the work, dedication, heartache, effort, commitment, risk that people have taken to create a business as non-essential. And I also knew how devastating closing the doors would be. That small businesses do not have a big running cash flow. They do not have lots of money in the bank. They do not have a line of credit to some organization that's happy to deal with them. They are the true risk takers in this country, and I knew that it was gonna be hard for them, and I knew what hard looked like from the experience with my own father, and it broke my heart. So part of what I talk about when I go out and speak to organizations is that they're essential on so many different levels. That it's important for them to show up and fight the fight and be part of rebuilding this country. So, all right. So where did I leave off, Michael? I was talking about Phil Knight, and I was talking about
you're good right where you are. This is it, man. I mean, Phil Knight's story and building his business is, as you were saying, just as essential as many other businesses. And I think of during those times of seeing the karate. There was a karate a place in New Jersey, I believe it was, that was trying to open their doors, and I don't go into the politics of anything ever, and I'm not going to either. But you could really feel their pain. They were standing there, they were arguing, they were really upset about not being able to have their customers, their business open and their customers coming in and pay, and they were really upset. And when you peel behind that upsetness, on the surface, it was they're angry and they're frustrated and all this other stuff, but behind
they don't want to care. They don't care for others. They're not willing to sacrifice for others. They're going to get your grandma sick,
right? And that's on the surface. That's what people see. But when you go behind the scenes to what you're talking about, the essential is it's not to disrespect, and it's not to turn your back to the doctors and the nurses and
believe me, they care as much for their customers and as much for the people that they come in contact with on a day-by-day basis as you and I do.
Right. And
they're just about to die, though. They're starving and they're afraid.
And that's where you go to, is when you start understanding that's what you're speaking to in terms of that essential, is that they need just as much support. They need to have their doors open, and they need to find a way. Thankfully, we're past those times in terms of closing the doors. But I don't think, and to your point of what the work that you do today and get looped and all that work that you do with small businesses, we're not past the time of the effects of that, and also the mindset behind it all, of what you said too, of being a risk taker. I mean, I started my company, Den 10 Insurance Services, and to me, starting my own insurance agency was always a dream, and it was always something I wanted to do. I didn't realize that it was a big risk. I didn't realize how much risk I was taking by starting my own insurance agency. And I'm fortunate to have gotten through those hard times, but I'm still dealing with hard times today. But it's a huge risk that we as entrepreneurs take in just really putting it all on one, put it all on black, right?
Put it all on, you're betting on yourself in a big way.
And that's it. And then we're just spinning and hoping that that's going to land on us eventually. And we put in the hard work, but it's a big risk. And I know that you're doing a lot of work in that space. So I think to bring us back to on track, as you might have asked for earlier, as we were going into this, is some of the work that you're doing today. So you're bringing in experience that you've had in working in big business in Wall Street and in the Chicago Exchange and everything. You're bringing that experience, and then you're helping small businesses. So when we go back to this risk, when we go back to the uncertainties that society has, that our economy has, how do you work with these small business owners? How do you help them through some of these difficult times?
There's so many different answers to this. Let me start by emphasizing the importance of relationships. Okay. I'm a small business owner also. I've started this new business. I came out of retirement. I was retired. I'd finished my career in New York City. My youngest daughter had finished high school and was on her way to college. And I was thrilled that I was done. And I fulfilled the dream. I moved out west to a ski town. I moved to Breckenridge, Colorado, nice. Something I've always wanted to do. I love the outdoors. I love the mountains. They give me a sense of comfort and peace. Some people get that from the ocean. Some people get that from water. Some people get that from desert. I feel the presence of a higher power in the mountains. It's just glorious for me there. And I loved being there. But what I found was that I wasn't very challenged. I bought into I paid my dues. I did all the right things. I saved my money. Now I'm going to go and kick up my heels and live the good life and ski during the winter and play golf all the time in the summer and really enjoy those senior days. I did volunteer work. I volunteered at an organization called BOEC. And BOEC is an organization that's about providing outdoor activities for those with mental or physical challenges. Wonderful organization. So there it is. I'm retired. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, what I thought was great. And I know that this isn't the feeling that everyone has. But for me, I started looking around going, I don't want to tell anyone this, but I'm bored. I don't know how to explain to people that I'm living my dream. And I feel like I have nothing to look forward to the next day. So the pandemic allowed me to be able to take a step back and really look at my life. I mean, we were locked down and, I had an opportunity to reflect. I looked at, my relationships, my family, my business decisions, the choices that I've made throughout the years, some good, some not so good. I wrote a book about it, The Prosperity Loop, which helped me define my mission, my new mission. My new mission is to be engaged and to be the world's leading advocate for small businesses. There was a time, Michael, when it was a common phrase for us to hear, small businesses are the backbone of this country. Mm-hmm. When was the last time you heard that phrase? Doesn't exist anymore.
Right, I have not.
Small businesses are still the backbone of this country, but they don't have a seat at the table. There's no one out there fighting for them. There's no one raising the profile of what's great about them. When someone leaves college, they're thinking, I'm going to go to work for, I don't know, Google or Microsoft or Ford or 3M or any number of organizations. These are all large organizations. Nobody thinks about that. I'm going to go work for, one of my, one of the pleasures that I get with this job is that I get to meet a lot of small business owners. And small business owners, people might think that they're the corner dry cleaner who might have 2 or 3 shops. Most small business owners have 30, 50 employees. You get hands-on experience. You get full-on responsibility very quickly, and you get some great training working for these organizations. And they provide insurance and they provide benefits. And as with many organizations, with the right organizations, they provide opportunity. And so I want to encourage people to look at small businesses, bring your talents. They are embraced and welcomed there and thrive. Don't be a widget. I was talking to a pilot at one of the larger airlines, and I was like, how does it feel to work there? He'd been there for 25 years. He's like, you want to know how I feel working here? And he showed me his ID. Didn't have his name on it. It had a number.
Wow.
Had a number. It's like, this is who I am to this firm. I am a number.
That's strange.
Yeah. It was all of his course. And I don't know if it's a privacy thing, but anyways, didn't feel a part of. And I think there's a lot of people that work for companies that don't feel a part of. And one of the things that I realized, and I know that working for some very large global institutions, I never really felt like they cared about me. I think they care about being profitable.
There's a school district here that I won't say the name of, but they are referring to their employees as human capital, and they've referenced them as human capital several times. And these are teachers and administrators that are working their butts off.
Let's take the human out of humanity.
and they're working their butts off, and they're working in a district that's super challenging, that deals with a lot of drugs and violence and poverty, and they're dealing with these situations in the classroom and outside of the classroom, and then they're referred to as human capital. And it just goes back to this badge that you're talking about. Is like it really takes, I think, the joy out of working in these organizations. It takes it out of it, and it takes, as you just said, the humanity out of working in these organizations where. What am I looked at as if I'm just a number or just referred to as human capital?
Exactly. So when I talk to small business owners, what I like to emphasize is that people are as important as profits, that I am a capitalist. I believe, in capitalism. It's important and the system works, and companies need to be profitable. No profit means no company, means no impact. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's really that simple. So I want companies to be profitable. It's important for companies to be profitable, but their profit comes from the people within the organization. Mm-hmm. And the people outside of the organization. See, the thing that I love about small businesses is that they're about relationships. They have to be about relationships because they're not going to be able to compete on price. They're not going to be able to compete on the latest technology. They're not going to be able to compete on innovation often. They're going to need to differentiate themselves and to build a client base that's usually referral oriented through relationships. If you want to build your business, focus on referrals, focus on creating relationships. So one of the most important lessons that I learned in working at my father's paving company, the team taught me how to drive a truck, and how to drive a tractor and how to shovel asphalt and rake asphalt and sweep the streets and all of those things. But you know what was the number one most important job that was executed at that company? Was at the end of the job, my father and I, or the head of the team, someone who was responsible for the job done, that would in person go up to the client, to the customer, and say, "Thank you for your business. It's important to us. We appreciate it." Mm-hmm. And there's not a single person that we ever said that to that didn't appreciate it. Mm. They loved hearing that. And that simple gesture ensured an ongoing flow of traffic, an ongoing flow of new business, because it's so rare. It was rare then, and it's even rarer today, that when you personally acknowledge your customers, your vendors, your employees as being valuable, it's like my father telling me that he loves me. It's one of the things that you remember. Right. It's a human connection. That's how we're built. That's how we exist in a positive environment, is the human connection. So I remember my father, this is in the 70s, was investing in the latest technology at the time. You know, I hear people talking about Google ads and Facebook ads and Chat GPT and all of the stuff that can drive traffic to their business, all technology, all online. And my father was doing the same thing. He was talking, I'll never forget this. He was talking to a neighbor about his investment that he was making in what was at that time the leading technology. It was called the Yellow Pages. And at the time, it was a big old book, but where your ad was placed in that book, what page, what corner, right, left, center, did it have an illustration? What typeset? Was there color in it? These were all important considerations that were all part of trying to use the latest technology to drive customers. His greatest source of customers was the referrals. It was the guys at Doris's Diner that he went to and met with on a day-by-day basis. It was the other parents at the Little League games that he would talk to and coach their sons. And there weren't any daughters back then, but daughters today. Mm-hmm. It was showing up at, he belonged to the Lions Club back then, a community group to support the community in a charity drive. These are your opportunities to create customers. You don't have to network and drive and shake hands and give out cards, but you do have to respect and listen to other people to create a positive bond and relationship. That way, when, in this case, they needed a new driveway, they knew who to call.
It's funny. I actually sold Yellow Pages. I cut my teeth in the corporate world in selling for Yellow Book, and I know those ads very, very well. and I know the paving pages very, very well. And I remember those are some of the biggest. Those are that, and the lawyers, contractors, and the lawyers had the most full page ads in those books. But there were definitely. I remember meeting with some contractors that were like your dad, very well known in their communities, and we'd see their trucks and everything. And part of our job was to chase those trucks. If they weren't in the book, then, follow that truck that's got a name and a phone number on it. And so I did that. That's how I made my earnings was through following those trucks. Right. And much of the time I'd hear these business owners that didn't advertise in the Yellow Pages, that didn't advertise anywhere. And they would tell me it's all word of mouth. And being new in the corporate world, being new in sales and in sales, generally speaking, I didn't understand what they meant. I didn't understand when they said to me, I don't need to advertise. It's all word of mouth, because I had been fed the advertising mantra of, if you're not in here, no one's going to find you. And when they need you, they're not going to find you, and all this other stuff, and I won't go down that one, because I do believe in advertising, but it needs to
believe in advertising also.
Yeah. But it needs to be supported by what you're talking about. And I soon learned that when I joined my chamber and I became more active in the chamber and in my communities, to your point, is that the relationships that we form in our community and the value that we offer our friends, our community members, through just showing up for things, but maybe small sponsorships instead, bring back more results. And then, of course, thanking your customers, as you said, bring back more results than having a Google AdWord campaign go out, because I've done that. I've done, Den 10 has spent a good amount of money in Google AdWords and in radio advertising. And while it's all really good and people mentioned, oh, I heard your ad or I saw your ad, I can count how many sales I've got from that, which we then had to stop, compared to the amount of sales that we've gotten from, again, local chamber members, friends, family, referrals from clients. It's the number is just outweighs the cost of the advertising spend right now for us as a small business. So yeah, it's definitely feel that one for you.
For larger national organizations, it's probably different. But I know for small businesses, relationships are your lifeblood. Mm-hmm. Every single person that you meet is your client is 1 to 3 degrees separation from that person. Mm-hmm. And so it behooves you to have a positive experience with that person professionally. It behooves you to have a positive experience with that person personally. Mm-hmm.
And it also speaks to the quality of work when you speak with somebody who works solely on word of mouth. You know that their quality of work has to be top notch, because no one's referring to their friends and family someone who's not. And you and I have both been down that path, right? Where we've worked with someone and the work wasn't up to par for us, and maybe we told them, maybe we didn't. Sometimes, unless, for me, my philosophy is, unless you ask me, I'm not really going to say anything. But I know that if somebody asks for that kind of work, I more than likely won't refer them, because now I'm putting my stamp of approval. And who are you going to come back to? You're going to come back to me and say, hey, Michael, why'd you send me over to that guy or that gal? And so word of mouth really shows credibility. If you can build a practice in building your business out through those relationships and through word of mouth, that's real credibility.
It's very, very, very valuable. I actually have the opposite opinion, Michael. I ask them if they want to know. So,
well, yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
Because I'm like, I know you're a small business. I know it's important to you. You probably don't get feedback from very many people. I'm willing to give you positive feedback. It might not feel positive right now, but I'm doing it because I care for you and I want you to do better.
Yeah. And you know what? And I think that that's terrific. I think your experience helps in being able to provide that, and I think I might be on my path to be able to start providing that as well. So I
say it with love. It's like most things. Say it with love, and if you're going to give some feedback because you just had a really bad experience and you want to talk to the manager, come back another day. Yep.
And that speaks to your leadership style too. You also mentioned to me that you don't follow the same leadership style that's kind of like taught. And I think that feedback and being able to provide feedback is really important when you're a leader of an organization, and being able to do it in a way, like you said, say it with love, where you can provide the feedback that's going to offer, of course, some positive, but also offer some room for improvement and provide some challenges as well. I'm a Toastmaster. And at Toastmasters, when we talk about feedback,
they're tough, aren't they? I'm a Toastmaster also. And you
Well, where I'm going with it is one of the questions in the intake form, and we're going to talk about Toastmasters for sure now. But one of the questions in the in the feedback form is and challenges. And I think that that's so important, right? So when we're giving feedback as leaders, is that of course to uplift our team, but then to show here's some room for improvement, and then here are some challenges. Like, look, you might have had an opportunity to actually take a chance or a risk here, and I'd like to see you try it. I'd like to see you go for it. And I really like that part of the feedback form. But take this next pass back to you, whichever way you choose to go down, leadership or Toastmasters. I like both.
Well, as a public speaker, one of the things that was suggested to me was to go and speak and to get in front. And Toastmasters is the best place you could possibly go. And like most places, which one you go to actually makes a difference. So check out a few. Feel comfortable. Feel that the people that are there are people that you respect, that you see them doing work that you like, and that you want to hear their feedback from. I'm really fortunate in the sense that in the Chicagoland area, there's a Toastmasters which is dedicated to professional speakers. Oh, you actually have to audition for it.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a little bit unusual. Subsequently, their standards are very high, and they expect you to be prepared. They expect you to have a message. They expect you to want to be better. It's not so much a gosh, I'd like to be a public speaker. In this group itself, we're all professional speakers here, and all of us are here to raise the bar on our game. And so this Toastmasters is a velvet glove with an iron fist inside. They're tough. They're tough, and they help me be better.
How many members are in that? Because,
well, they do it hybrid now after COVID. So most meetings will have 10 to 20 different members.
Wow.
Show up. It's active. And there are people there that are making a living as speakers. So it's, and that's not for everyone. I'm an advocate for Toastmasters overall because I believe that being able to feel comfortable giving your message, talking in front of your peers, or at a presentation at work, or at a school board meeting, and not letting your fear interfere with your desire to communicate with others is really important. So getting any type of support or training or understanding on how to be a better communicator, I think has value. So regardless of the group that you join, I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I'd like to learn about your group, especially since it's hybrid. Our group is also hybrid. We meet via Zoom and in person, but ours is more of that dabbler group of a lot of Toastmasters come and go in it, and are really trying to just get more comfortable speaking in front of others and get more comfortable sharing their message. I've been a Toastmaster for 6 years, and
shows, by the way, you have a very comfortable and consistent tone.
Well, and yeah, and I attribute that success to it. I attribute actually most of my professional success to Toastmasters. It's where, it's
kudos.
Yeah, it's where I really learned about myself, about my why, right? It's also where I learned how to be more authentic in delivering a message. And I had a mentor, a really great mentor when I first started, and it's so important to have somebody to give you honest feedback. And it's so funny that we were just talking about that, right? And she said to me, she said, Michael, because I had the desire, right? So I got up and gave my speeches, had them all structured and written out and prepared, and was able to get in front and do them without the script and all that stuff. I even made it to districts for a Tall Tales contest and everything, right? And she said to me, Michael, you speak great, you're doing really wonderful, you're growing, everything, blah, blah, blah. And she said, but the one thing that I see and that others have mentioned to me is that it's not you up there. And I was like, huh? I said, what are you talking about? It's me. What do you, I said, you're crazy, right? But I wasn't trying to be defensive with her, because I knew that she was coming from a place of love, as you mentioned. And that's Linda Grace Farley, by the way, for all of our listeners. She's amazing. She follows me. She's still a great supporter. And I always told her, I said, Linda, when I'm on the big stage one day, there's always a seat up front waiting and reserved for you. And she said, it's just not you up there. And so because she came to me in this place of love and shared this with me, this about my authenticity, I had my defenses up, but I knew that there was some truth to it. And that's what helped me become the speaker that I am today, and that I continue to work on and develop, is to be true, is to be honest as to who I am, and to understand that there's going to be mess ups and whatever, but that it's me, it's my authentic self speaking. And, that was my biggest lesson that I got at Toastmasters, was that, the ums and the crutch words and all that other stuff, of course, we work on, and developing our message and finding our why is also very challenging. But to find our authenticity as a speaker, that to me, I think, was the hardest challenge. But I think what made that easier is by doing it often.
It makes a difference.
Yeah, doing it often. So my club, we meet weekly, so that helps to be able to do it often. Another thing that you spoke about is setting goals. And I like that you have like a philosophy on setting goals. And it has to do with that you can control your own thoughts. And I'm interested if you could share a little bit more about how you set goals and how you're able to rein in your thoughts and be able to gain control over them.
So there's a lot written, and a lot of different training programs that you can get in regards to setting goals. It's a popular topic, and most of them are oriented on structuring better time management, being more productive, building relationships. They're often very outward oriented, and they all generally have setting very specific goals over set periods of time, which I do. I have a 5-year goal. I have a 1-year goal. But my development for goal fulfillment, I find I have the greatest level of success and control over my inner development. So I've had goals where actually, when I was younger, I had a 5-year goal. I was doing extraordinarily well down at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. I was all I had to do is follow the golden path for the next 5 years, and I was going to be well on my way. Life doesn't happen that way. Life is not linear. Life has changes and curveballs and pratfalls and surprises. And actually, how fantastic, because how boring would it be if it was always the same? I heard a great analogy. Imagine you're a golfer and you shot perfect par every single time you played.
Yeah. How
boring. You never went in the sand. You never hit it out of bounds. You never had a downward lie. For those of us that play a lot of golf, that's part of the nature of golf. When you can scramble out of some trouble and have a super shot, it's part of the experience of joy of golf. So embrace the imperfections of life. It's what makes it life. But it sure has a way of screwing up plans. And I would get so frustrated because I had expectations that I would, I made my first $1 million when I was 28 years old.
Wow.
And life is linear. Here's one, next is 10. After 10, you just keep on climbing. But it doesn't work that way. In my case, I made some mistakes. I started using again. Or I got fired in 2008 when the whole financial industry got fired. I had a great job. I was flying high back then. I was crushing it. And all of a sudden, I'm walking out of my office with a box along with hundreds of thousands of others who did everything right that they were supposed to do. They worked hard. They went to the best schools. They studied. They got good jobs. They bought a home. They put their kids through school. They showed up every single day. And through no fault of their own, their life got turned upside down. That's the nature of life. How you react to that, how you grow from that, really is the only thing that you can control. Your thoughts and your actions. What do I learn from this? How do I come back from this? Do I want to come back from this? I'm an advocate of saying yes. Part of my talk is telling and reminding businessmen, small businessmen and women that they're essential, is that there are going to be times when you want to quit. There are going to be times that are difficult, and you've been fighting the battles, and it's just like, I've had enough. And it reminds me of, remember the old movie, It's a Good Life with Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah.
Used to play literally nonstop during Christmas. 24 hours.
It does in our house. My wife has the DVD, and we play it every Christmas. It's our favorite movie.
It's an interesting movie in the sense that, yes, it's a Christmas movie, but it's about Jimmy Stewart plays a plain guy who wants to travel the world and make something of himself. And through various life circumstances, he ends up taking over the family business, which he didn't want to do. He ends up marrying the local sweetheart, which he actually did want to do and was the right thing for him. But through kids and all the responsibilities of life, he essentially had to give up his dreams. And then a hard thing happens, and he's about to lose his business. And he's put in the situation where he believes at that time that the only value he has to his life is his life insurance policy. That the only way that he can save face, that he can support his family, is to give up his life for the life insurance policy. And what occurs is that his angel, Clarence, shows him what the world would have been without him. And it's a cold and very different world. And I just want to remind all of us that we have such a profound impact, a ripple effect on so many thousands of people, on so many variations that are positive in the world, that keep pushing through. Keep pushing through. I've been in those dark days. I've wanted to say I've had enough, but I had someone show me who reached out and helped me. And that's the advice that I give everyone. What do you do when you're in a really difficult situation? Ask for help. I know I know that growing up, asking for help was not considered a viable option. You just don't do it. You suck it up. You man up. You do whatever it takes. You maybe have the conversation with your wife. But I know a lot of men that have difficult situations in their families, have no idea, similar to my father. This is actually an opportunity of building your relationship with your partner or with others. This is an opportunity to learn how to create long-standing relationships. Because the relationship that I had with my uncle when he helped me formed a bond that lasted to the day that he died. The relationships that I have with my partners when I talk to them about difficult situations in a manner that's based on solution, not based on blame, creates a connection and a kinship that lasts a lifetime and helps you as a human being build a richer life. So ask for help when you're in trouble, and don't be afraid that when things are difficult, they're going to be difficult at times, and they're going to be different than what you originally anticipated. So make plans, but be prepared for variations.
Yeah, and those difficulties, as you said, and those variations could sometimes really shape who you are for the better, especially if you're able to make it through. And sometimes, I mean, I think about it with basketball. It's like sometimes, some of the worst games, the hardest games played, and that I've played in, and of course watching too. But I'm talking about myself, my experience here. Where it's like, it's a battle and I didn't even have the best game, right? But it's a battle and our team is fighting hard and we come back and we win, and sometimes we lose. But the experience after that is like, wow, that was amazing. It was like the best game. And so I play every Sunday morning, and my wife will ask me, how was your morning today? How'd you do? And some mornings are great where, I'm shooting really well and I'm scoring a bunch of baskets and everything. And I'm like, oh yeah, I shot really well, but we didn't win or whatever it was. And then there's some mornings where I didn't shoot well, but to the point that I'm making here where, but I played on a few teams that we had to come back and we had to fight and we fought and we rebounded and we blocked shots and we got steals. And even though we lost, it was a good morning. I'm like, that was a good morning. Like I really felt the emotions of that morning. I really felt it. And those are really, really great. And so I think relating it back to business, I love that you bring up It's a Wonderful Life, because that moment I think speaks to so many people where we're looking for, I hate to say the easy out, but that's what we're looking for, is that like it gets tough and it gets scary. And the other moment in that movie that I was wondering if you're going to reference was when he goes to the guy in the wheelchair, the guy who kind of ran the city or ran the town there, and he was going to sell out to him. He was going to sell out, and then something clicked, and he said, "No, I can't do it," and he didn't do it. And I think that moment of realization is when we as entrepreneurs, as business leaders, and executives, and even when you're working in a firm, same thing, the entrepreneur, is that moment is when you see, there's another door, there's another option, there's something else I can do, there's more to it. And I love that you bring up the idea of asking for help, because it is man up, it is suck it up, it is pull yourself together, but it's also ask for someone to help. And that's essentially what he ended up doing. On a more of a personal level here, I am very interested in 2008, and I think many of our audience are too. Most of us, many of us, not most of us, many of us witnessed it through the lens of a news report, or through the lens of the movie The Big Short. But I've never had the experience to speak with somebody who experienced it firsthand and was walking out with the boxes. So I would like, if you're willing to share, just what that experience was like, and what was going through your mind, and how did you bounce back from it?
Great question, Michael. So for people that were in the financial industry, it was apparent to many that things were moving too far, too fast. Some would say bending the rules. I'll say breaking the rules. I'm going to start out by saying the fact that nobody went to jail in 2008 is a travesty. They talk about how are you going to change the behavior within organizations to have greater integrity. Sure, you can give them an evening class at Columbia University or NYU about ethics and morals. Okay, you could have HR training, sure, but if you want to fundamentally change behavior, you punish people that break the rules. It's really that simple. If I'm the managing director of a mortgage-backed security desk at some financial institution, and I've been packaging loans knowing that the ratings on them are not AAA rated, that I'm essentially packaging kryptonite and selling them to pension funds that are supposed to fund the retirements of teachers, firemen, older people, and they all blow up. I participated in criminal activity. So if that person goes to jail, I promise you that the person that sits in his desk next is not going to do that behavior. But if all he does is get fired, gets a severance package of $5 million and has to, go to some other firm, that's not going to cut it now, is it? Nobody really feels like they were threatened or actually did anything wrong. I think in particular of a mortgage company that was based in California who provided financial incentives to their salespeople to sell inappropriate loans to people with no documentation and absolutely no right to be able to have access to really dangerous leverage financial packages, loans that were virtually guaranteed to increase in rates and put people out on the streets. Those salesmen were given incentives to, if you sell this type of package, yes, it's riskier. Yes, it's inappropriate for the customer, but we're going to pay you a higher commission. This is the decision that was made by senior management to offer these commission structures. I'm sorry, that person deserves to go to jail. So unless and until you fundamentally punish people for wrong behavior, and there was plenty of wrong behavior going on in 2008, you're not going to change behavior of the people within those organizations. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of really good people that work in financial institutions. They're trying to do the right thing. They have families. They have perspectives. They are just incentivized in a manner that doesn't encourage them to act in a higher level of integrity. So for me, when our firm had a significant reduction in headcount, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I was doing well. I had experienced success, and I had done nothing wrong. And I had kids in school, college. I had at that time I had an apartment I was renting in Battery Park. I was with my girlfriend at that time and two of her children living with us, and my daughter. There was 3 kids living with us at that time, and it was scary because there were no jobs. There were no other jobs in the financial industry. There were thousands of people looking for anything, and there was just nothing there. So it was scary. It forced me to go into a different industry. I ended up going into the software industry, selling software to financial institutions, which wasn't such a bad thing. Wasn't the end of the world. Wasn't the end of the world.
Right. Found a way to adapt.
We all have the ability to adapt. Again, our strength comes internally. How we react to things dictates the response and the solution that's going to arrive. If we believe that that we're in trouble and that there's no solution and that there's no opportunity, well, you're right. If you believe that you can find something, that if you do the work, if you are creative, that something will develop, you're right. Let me give you another example, Michael. So in 1960, my father's construction company, him and his brother Ben started the construction company right after I was born in 1958. Because remember, everyone, I'm 65 years old. And 1960 in the construction company was a rocket time. The subdivisions in the Chicagoland area were exploding. There was building going on everywhere. You could not hire anyone. There was no one to hire. Everyone was looking for people to come join their firm. Huh. I hear that really quite a bit today. I can't find anyone to work for me. I can't keep my employees. Mm-hmm. I've never seen anything like this. Well, let me be the first to say it's been like this before, and not just in 1960, but in times before. It's one of the great things about studying history is, as they say, history may not repeat itself, but it rhymes. And there's a lot of truth to that. You can really learn a lot. So my father was asking everyone, do you know anyone that'll work? Do you know anyone that'll work? Do you know anyone that'll work? Finally, some guy that he met at Doris's Diner, a referral, says, I know of a couple guys, but there's an issue with them. Doesn't matter, send them over. So the next day they came over and they went to work, and they worked hard. They worked a full day, and that night my dad hired them. Next day, Jim and James, they were brothers. Jim and James, I love that.
Yeah.
They were brothers. They show up, and the two other guys that were working for my dad at the time didn't show up and never came back. Because Jim and James, the issue with them was they were black. Oh. And in 1960, this is 3 years before Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Okay, there is civil unrest going on in this country in regards to racial relations. And hiring two black men in the northern suburbs, they were in Evanston, but was radical. Was radical. And there was blowback. And the immediate blowback was the two other gentlemen, the two white men that were on the crew, refused to show up the next day. James said, I'm sorry about those guys, but I have two other guys that will be here tomorrow if you want them. Sure. James had a big family. They were all family members. From that point on, my father hired only family members from Jim and James. The entire crew became African American.
Wow.
His firm tripled in size in 1960 when other people couldn't find anyone to work because he was willing to do something different. Okay. So when I talk to business owners today that are like, I can't find anyone. And I dig a little bit deeper. Really what I hear is I'm waiting for it to get back to the way it was before. And I'm like, well, hold on. We just went through a global pandemic. We had 2 years of a lockdown. Are you the same person that you were 2 years ago? 3 years ago? No. Is your business the same business? No. Well, why do you think your workforce is the same workforce? You have to figure out what it is that will attract someone to be part of your firm. Because here's the headline. it's not going back to the way that it was. The world is different, and it's changing, and it's going to continue to change. Okay. So if you want your business to grow, and we all want our businesses to grow, and I want your business to grow, what's it going to be that attracts someone to your firm? So I have a friend, second generation. How much time do we have, Michael?
Oh,
How are we doing?
As much time as you want. I just check the audio levels when I do that.
Okay. Last story. How much, this friend, second generation bike owner. Okay. I knew his family's been running this bike store for years and years and years. I knew his father, Mr. B. And Mr. B had a great business. He was a hands-on owner. I remember seeing Mr. B on his hands and knees putting training wheels on the bike of a little girl. Okay, the proud parents behind her. He'd be down there with a wrench in one hand and a Winston in the other. It's just a different era.
Oh yeah.
So that little girl is a client today buying bikes for her kids.
Wow.
No, it's just how it works.
Yeah.
Anyways, my friend can't find anyone to work. High school kids used to be his go-to market for people to work at his shop. Nope. So I started saying, what about this crowd? What about immigrants? What about tried that? Can't find any. I'm like, I don't think you're looking in the right way, but okay. What about mothers who need a job? What about hiring mothers that need training, that are looking for a job, that the idea of selling bikes to little kids and their families would sound appealing to them? Now has a floor of mothers and working in the shop selling bikes, because they were looking for someone that's willing to have a flexible schedule, that has a clean environment, that is supportive of families. Okay. So there's solutions. It's just not necessarily the solution that always worked before.
Right.
But it's your job to think about a different one. And guess what? You know how Greg found that solution? Oh, I just said his name.
That's okay.
My friend. He asked for help.
Asking for help. I go back to your dad for a second here, because one of the things I was going to bring up is the way that you have conversations with people, and the willingness that you have to touch on things that are sometimes very difficult to talk about, such as climate change and discrimination and different perspectives on things. Your dad, like you said, hired two black men at a time when that was, air quotes, not done for a white business owner, right? Especially and where he was. What do you think, or do you know, what do you know about him where he was able to be comfortable with that, or able to deal with that adversity?
So for better or worse, one of the things about my father was that he really didn't care what somebody else thought of him. Okay. He was his own man. So the opinion of someone who thought that he was doing, quote, the wrong thing wasn't as valuable to him as it might be to some others. And I think in this world of social media, in which we're all so afraid of being canceled, we're all so afraid of voicing our opinion, we're all so afraid of not fitting in. I think there's something to be said about being comfortable with doing the right thing. Okay. Yes, it's a risk. But if you're not hurting someone, if you're not insulting someone, if you're not taking advantage of someone, if you're actually helping someone and caring for another human being is, in my experience, generally a risk worth taking. Okay. So don't be so concerned about the haters. Taylor Swift was just here in Chicago, and I didn't see her show, but people are raving about it. Haters are going to hate.
Yeah. And I like that, and not being so concerned with that part. And then the way that you approach it is through a solutions-based model, in that having these conversations, these tough conversations, and really finding the root of it as what's the solution in all of it, and having the conversation focused around that.
It's really one of the skills that I learned in the financial industry and being high level institutional sales, and you get a lot of training, is to listen. Okay. And to have empathy. And empathy means putting yourself in the other person's position. Okay. What is the perspective of my client? What's the win for him? Why is he being so difficult? I don't know. Let's ask. When you can have the courage to look for solutions, because people think that sales is selling different colored widgets, okay, and being fast hand and slick motioned and fast to the tongue. Being successful at high level sales is about identifying solutions that work. Okay. And the only way that you find solutions that work is by listening. And when someone interrupts you in the middle of what you're talking about, when someone is so busy thinking about their own answer in response to the conversation that you're having, and that means ourselves, if you're thinking about what you're going to say instead of listening to what is being said, trust me, listen to the person. Your answer will come. It doesn't have to be a point 1, 2, 3 that you thought through while this person's talking. If that's your approach right now, you are not listening. You're debating, and you're looking to have points on the debate card. Okay. Listen. What's the joint solution that's a win-win for everyone? That's how you create relationships. That's how you create sales. That's how you retain customers.
And to add to that, in something that you also wrote about, is having integrity and collaboration. And that you spoke more about that in terms of leadership, but I think when you're talking about sales, when you're talking about listening here, is that when you come with integrity and when you're looking to collaborate, you talk about win-win. It's like, that's what collaboration is. Collaboration is like that melange of ideas, of thoughts, of solutions and problem solving. And when you come together with someone who, from a sales perspective, and you're there and you're problem solving together and you're collaborating on a solution, it's almost like the sale happens on its own.
Sale does happen on its own. And people are like, how can you be in sales? I'm like, sales is so much fun. Right. Are you kidding? You get to be creative because, again, when you're, there are difficult problems in high level organization, high level sales, and negotiating big contracts. Actually, any contracts. Sure. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to puff myself. And when you're given the opportunity to find creative solutions, A doesn't work, B doesn't work. A is my position, B is your position. Great. Let's find out where there's common ground or what we're missing that both of us can agree on, and come to terms to build around that.
Mm-hmm.
That's when sales is fun.
Yeah.
Because you're finding solutions. You're finding a way to help your client have a better life. So if you're selling a product that you don't believe in, if you're selling something that your heart's not in, stop it. I don't care how much money you make. I promise, if you're making a lot more.
It's funny, kind of go full circle with my Yellow Page days. Is I remember I was flying high, I was doing really well, and my manager was going to put me on the management track. And I remember having a conversation with her, and I told her I just don't believe in it. And for me, this is I started in 2005 or 6, I think it was, and so this was like around 2007, 2008. And I said, I just don't believe in it. And this is when Google was really starting to do well. And I said, I just don't believe in it. And she said, what are you talking about? And I'm like, look at what's going on the internet. And I'm selling Yellow Page ads. Something doesn't make sense here, something's, what are we doing here? And I don't believe the case studies that you're giving me about phone calls being made to offices and all that. I don't believe any of it. And my heart wasn't in it any longer. And that's, sales started going down. And I remember I actually became depressed. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what I was experiencing at the time. But when I look back at that time in my life, I was making money, but my heart wasn't in it. I was just doing what I was told to do and making sales. And then eventually, I started plummeting. I started not doing well at my job. And it was because my heart wasn't in it, because I didn't believe what I was selling. And you're 100% right. When I started finding what I believed in, which is what led me to the insurance world and understanding that hey, what I'm selling actually protects somebody's investment in their home, in their car, in their family, in their life. When I started in the insurance world, which is the one that spoke to me, I was like, okay, now I'm actually helping people. And that changed my life in terms of cold calling, building a business, and then deciding to start my own agency because my heart was in it, to your point. Was like, I knew that no matter what I'm doing, I'm helping someone. When someone said, I got enough insurance, I'm like, that's cool. That's good. Good for you. I'm here for you as a resource. If you need me, I got you, and that really changed my perspective. So I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
In a lot of this, we talk about the different focuses in our lives and in our businesses, and we've talked a lot about your leadership style, your communication style, but we didn't really touch on Get Looped. And I really want to understand Get Looped, and I want our audience to understand it, because you have a mission there to help small business owners and mid-sized business owners. And you have a book, you have a program, you have so much that you're doing there. And I know you're on a public speaking circuit as well. And in these final minutes together, I hope that you might be able to kind of distill a little bit as to what Get Looped is and how you can help someone's small business. Sure.
Get Looped, which you can find at www.get-looped.com, get-looped.com, is my umbrella organization to have a number of different businesses that support small and mid-sized businesses. It includes my book, The Prosperity Loop, which you can find at major bookstores and online, or you can subscribe through my website. And it involves my speaking business right now. I'm in the process of creating a third one, but I'm going to hold off on that until I have something of value that I can offer. If you'd like me to speak with your organization, your association, please reach out to me through my website. I'm happy to. Again, my mission is to help create prosperity and wealth for all Americans. My focus is on being an advocate for the values and benefits of small businesses and their owners.
So how do you do that is what I'm trying to understand, I guess.
People ask me to help consult, and I've been saying no to that because I have a broader message, but I've recently said yes to a consulting role in which someone wants me to come in and help his team, his organization, understand the value of the work that they do within their community and within their customer base. So how to value their customers, how to interact with their customers, how to come to work with purpose, with young people in particular. And I think this is something that they're so right in regards to this. As I had mentioned, when you and I were first starting, it was to go and get a check and pay off our bills and our debts. And then it was to get more stuff. I don't believe that we even had the concept of doing the right thing at work. Sure, there were those that were, teachers and workers in the charity, nonprofits, or going to work overseas and the Peace Corps. But it wasn't my world. My world was about let's make money and let's get rich.
Mm. And so is it like systems that you put these?
What I want to finish with that, Michael,
go ahead.
is that it just doesn't work. It's just, we want more. We spend so much time at work. We have so much invested in the time and the commitment that we have to work, that how can we not want to leverage all of that effort, all of that skill, all of that focus into also making the world a better place, making our lives a better place, making our communities a better place. So it's teaching, it's seminars, it's classes.
Okay, cool. So that's good to know. And so it's a membership?
It's not actually. It's you hire me out. I come in and I do a series of programs.
Okay, very cool. So and of course you said that was getlooped.com.
.com.
Fantastic.
www.get-looped.com.
Yeah, and just in speaking with you for this short amount of time, it's like, yeah, so much experience, so much knowledge that you're able to share, and I know that we'll be talking some more. When I asked for your mantra, you shared this, and you did go on and tell us about why you shared this quote, and I would love for you to be able to verbalize this yourself. But here's the quote that you shared: is that in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. And that's Matthew 7:12. And you talk about this being a reminder that as we're all human and equal. And I would love for you to help us better understand that quote as well.
We are all human and we are all equal. And it's when I've felt that I'm better than, or I'm special, or I have certain capabilities that allow me to be able to feel entitled. Those are the unhappiest times of my life. And when I right-size myself to being one of service, of giving, of support, of caring, of loving, not only do I do well professionally, but I soar personally within myself and in the relationships about me. And that's the real wealth and richness of life. So if do unto others as you would have them do unto you, it's really that simple.
I love that. I absolutely love that. All right. Well, if we can't find you in an office somewhere across the country working with a team, where else can we find you in terms of fun hobbies? You mentioned skiing earlier, so you piqued my interest.
I'm a skier and a golfer and a biker.
Okay.
So tomorrow morning I'm going to go up to the northern suburbs where there's a lot less cars and go for an early morning bike ride with some friends. I enjoy that immensely. I love being outside.
Yeah.
So yes, skiing, biking, golf. I have to say, my girlfriend is in the entertainment industry and she's very creative. And I have the good fortune of being able to go with her to various places and participate in watching people be creative in a number of different formats. And all I can say is that I am continually impressed with how creative and bright people are. It's virtually limitless in regards to what people can do. And so give them an opportunity, give others an opportunity to shine and show off. And I promise you'll be continually gratified in what you find.
Awesome. Thank you for that. It's been truly a heartfelt conversation with you. I've really, really enjoyed it. How can people connect with you? Of course, it'll be in the show notes, but for our audio listeners, how can people connect with you?
On the website. It's by far the easiest place.
By far the easiest place. You could find them there. Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to spend this time with you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's really great.
Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den 10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.